The day my husband left me for a woman 23 years younger, he didn't look ashamed. He looked relieved. "Claire," Richard said, placing his wedding ring on the kitchen table, "I think we both know this marriage has been over for a long time." I stared at the ring. It made a small metallic sound against the wood. That sound was strangely loud. For 31 years, that ring had been on his finger. I had watched him wear it while building our first business, while holding our daughter in the hospital, while standing beside my mother's coffin, while promising me, on our 25th anniversary, that no one would ever come between us. Now he was placing it on the table like a receipt he no longer needed. I looked up at him. "Who is she?" Richard did not ask me how I knew. That was the first thing that broke something inside me. He simply sighed. "Vanessa." The name hung between us. Vanessa. I had heard it before. Not from him. From his phone. A message that had appeared on the screen one night while he was in the shower. "I missed the way you look at me." I had asked him about it. He had laughed. Work drama. I had believed him. That was my first mistake. Richard was 61. I was 58. We had been married since I was 27 years old. I had known him longer than I had known myself as a wife. I knew how he took his coffee. I knew he hated being ignored. I knew he became silent when he was angry. And I knew that whenever he said, "It's not what you think," it was almost always exactly what I thought. Still, I had spent the last year convincing myself that something was wrong with me. I blamed menopause, my weight, my gray hair, the fact that I no longer wanted to spend every weekend at expensive restaurants, surrounded by people Richard barely knew. He called me negative. I called myself tired. He said I had changed. I told myself everyone changed, but there was one thing I had not changed. I was still standing beside him. Richard, apparently, had decided that was no longer enough. "She's 35, he said. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because I didn't know what else to do. "Thank you for telling me." His face tightened. "I'm serious. So am I. She understands me." I looked at him. "After how long?" He said nothing. That silence answered the question. I walked to the coffee maker and turned it off. The kitchen smelled like burnt toast. It was the same kitchen where we had celebrated our daughter's graduation. The same kitchen where Richard had once danced with me while cooking spaghetti. The same kitchen where he had kissed me goodbye that morning. Then he had gone to meet Vanessa. I had thought he was going to the office. He had been going to her. "How long?" I asked. Richard looked toward the window. "Claire, how long?" He rubbed his forehead. "About a year." A year. I felt something inside me go completely still. A year of lies. A year of secret messages. A year of hotel rooms. A year of coming home and climbing into bed beside me. I looked at him. "Did you love her?" Richard hesitated. That hesitation hurt more than the answer would have. "I don't know." I nodded slowly. "Then why are you leaving?" His expression changed. For the first time he looked irritated. "Because I want a different life." "A different life?" "Yes." "What does that mean?" He looked directly at me, and then he said the sentence I would remember for the rest of my life. "I want to feel young again." The words were simple. The damage was not. I looked at my hands. There were small lines around my fingers. The hands that had raised our daughter. The hands that had signed the first business loan. The hands that had cooked for him when he was sick. The hands that had packed his suitcase before every business trip. Apparently none of that made me young enough to keep. Richard pushed a folder across the table. "Everything is in there." I stared at it. "What is it?" "Divorce papers." I didn't touch the folder. "You already prepared them?" "Yes." That was when I understood. This was not a decision he had made that morning. He had already spoken to a lawyer, already made plans, already found somewhere to live, already chosen a future. The only thing he had not done was tell me, because I had been the last part of the plan. I opened the folder. The first pages were legal documents. The last page was a property agreement. I read it once, then again. My name appeared at the bottom. I frowned. I never signed this. Richard leaned against the counter. You did. No. Claire, you sign hundreds of things. I know my signature. He smiled, not warmly, impatiently. You're upset. You're not thinking clearly. I looked at the page again. The signature looked like mine, but it wasn't. The pressure was wrong. The final letter was too sharp. Someone had copied it. I lifted my eyes. Who prepared this? Does it matter? Yes. Not everything is a conspiracy. I said nothing. Richard grabbed his coat. Vanessa is waiting. The sentence landed harder than I expected. Not because he was leaving, because he wanted me to know she was waiting, somewhere, for him. While I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by the remains of our life, I looked at him. Are you moving in with her? He paused. Then he nodded. Yes. I laughed softly. Richard frowned. What? Nothing. No, say it. I looked around the kitchen, at the family photographs, at the wooden table we had bought during our first year of marriage, at the wall where our daughter's height had been marked every birthday. Then I looked back at him. You're leaving our marriage for a woman you've known for 1 year. Richard's jaw tightened. I'm leaving because I deserve to be happy. That sentence was the one he would repeat later, to our friends, to our daughter, to everyone who asked questions. He deserved to be happy, and apparently I had become an obstacle standing between him and happiness. Before he reached the door, I said, Richard. He stopped. Do you remember what you promised me when we got married? He didn't turn around. I continued. You said you would never walk away when things became difficult. He finally looked back. His face was strangely empty. People change, Claire. Then he walked out. The front door closed. I stood there for almost a minute. Then I noticed something. Richard had forgotten his phone charger. I picked it up. I was about to take it outside when his phone, still connected to the charger, lit up. A message appeared. He hasn't told her about the money. I froze. Another message appeared. If he doesn't give me what he promised, I'll tell her everything. I stared at the screen. The sender's name was not Vanessa. It was a number I didn't recognize. I read the message again. Then a third one appeared. You have 7 days. 7 days. For what? I stood alone in the kitchen, holding the phone of the man who had just left me. And for the first time that morning, I understood something terrifying. Richard might not have left me because he had fallen in love with a younger woman. Maybe he had left me because something was about to happen, something involving money, something involving a secret. And perhaps the woman he had chosen was not the biggest threat in his life. Perhaps she was only the first person who had finally discovered who my husband really was. I looked at the closed front door, then at the message. You have 7 days. And suddenly I wondered what would happen on the 8th. Not mena nawit Martin. Night, nanadod. I read the message 3 times before I understood what frightened me most. It wasn't the words. It was the fact that the sender knew exactly how to make Richard afraid. Not. I stood in the kitchen with his phone in my hand, listening to the silence left behind by the man who had just walked out of my life. Then I did something I had never done in 31 years of marriage. I opened his messages. The first conversation was with Vanessa. There were hundreds of messages. Some were ordinary, some were intimate, some made me feel physically sick. But then I noticed something strange. Their messages had changed during the last month. At first they were romantic. I can't wait to see you. I wish you were here. Soon, I promise. Then suddenly, the tone became different. Did you find it? You said you had access. I'm running out of patience. I scrolled further. Then I saw a message from Vanessa. You promised me the money, Richard. His reply was only 3 words. Not yet. Be patient. I stared at the screen. Money. What money? I opened another conversation. This one was with a number saved under the name Tom. The messages were shorter. The transfer cannot be traced back to me. Then use her name. I stopped breathing. The next message came from Tom. She'll notice eventually, Richard replied. Not if she believes the divorce is the reason. I read that sentence again. Then I sat down. The room seemed to tilt around me. The divorce. Was it possible that Richard had planned to make me so emotionally devastated that I would never look closely at the financial documents? Was leaving me part of a larger plan? I wanted to call him. I wanted to scream. Instead, I took photographs of every message. My hands were shaking so badly that I had to take some of them twice. Then I heard a car outside. I froze. The headlights moved across the living room wall. A car stopped in front of the house. For a moment, I thought Richard had come back. Then someone got out. It was Vanessa. She walked toward the front door alone. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity has a dangerous way of overpowering fear. I unlocked the door. Vanessa stood on the porch. Up close, she looked younger than 35. That irritated me more than it should have. Her hair was perfect. Her coat was expensive. She looked like the kind of woman who had never spent an entire night crying in a bathroom because her husband had decided she was no longer desirable. She looked at me. Can I come in? I almost laughed. You seem to know your way around my husband's life. Her expression changed. I'm not here to fight with you. Then why are you here? She looked over her shoulder. The street was empty. Then she lowered her voice. Because Richard lied to you. I stared at her. About the affair? No. About the divorce? No. Then what? Vanessa looked directly into my eyes. The money. I felt the same cold sensation I had felt when I read the message. What money? She hesitated. That hesitation made me suspicious. You know what I'm talking about. No, I don't. Richard has been hiding money for years. I stepped back. From whom? Vanessa didn't answer. Where is it? I stared at her. Why would I know? Because he put it somewhere you would never look. The words made my skin crawl. I wanted to believe she was manipulating me. I wanted to believe she was simply a younger woman trying to steal my husband and now inventing a story because she had been exposed. That was the easiest explanation. And perhaps that was exactly what Vanessa wanted me to believe. Did Richard send you? I asked. No. Are you threatening me? No. Then what do you want? She looked down at the wedding ring on my finger. For the first time, her confidence disappeared. I want what he stole. The sentence was so unexpected that I didn't know how to respond. Stole from whom? Vanessa looked toward the house. Then she said, My father. I stared at her. Your father? She nodded. Daniel Hart. The name struck me like a slap. I knew that name. Everyone in Richard's business world knew it. Daniel Hart had been Richard's former partner. He had supposedly died in a boating accident 12 years earlier. I had attended the funeral. I had sent flowers to his widow. I had watched Richard cry. Daniel Hart is dead, I said. Vanessa's face became pale. Yes, then how could Richard steal from him? She looked at me. Before he died. I felt a strange pressure in my chest. What are you saying? My father discovered that Richard had been taking money from their company. I shook my head. That's impossible. Why? Because Richard built that company. Vanessa smiled bitterly. That's what he told you. I wanted to close the door. I wanted her gone. But there was something in her voice. Not jealousy, not anger, grief. You knew about me, I said. She looked away. Yes. How long? Before I met Richard. That answer frightened me more than anything else. Why? Vanessa looked back at me. Because I was looking for evidence. The street suddenly seemed too quiet. You came into his life deliberately. Yes. I felt my stomach turn. You planned the affair. I planned to get close to him. And then he made it easy. I stared at the woman who had destroyed my marriage. For 1 second I wanted to slap her. Instead, I asked, "Did you love him?" She laughed. It was a terrible sound. No. That answer hurt Richard more than it hurt me. Maybe because I suddenly realized that the woman he had left me for had never wanted him at all. She had wanted something else. "What did your father lose?" I asked. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. Everything. She told me that Daniel had been investigating Richard when the boating accident happened. According to Vanessa, the accident had never been properly investigated. The boat had been found. Daniel had not. The body had supposedly been recovered days later, but Vanessa claimed the body had never been positively identified. I felt a chill. "You're saying your father might not have died?" "I'm saying I never saw him." The room went silent. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph. It was old. A younger Richard stood beside Daniel, and beside Daniel stood a young woman, Vanessa. I looked at the date. It was 15 years old, the same year Daniel had supposedly died. But there was something else. On the back of the photograph, someone had written, "As she knows where it is." I looked up. Who wrote this? Vanessa shook her head. "I don't know. You brought this to me?" "I found it in Richard's office." "When?" "Yesterday." I thought of the folder I had found, the missing photograph, the mysterious message, the forged signature. Suddenly, too many pieces were beginning to fit together, but one piece still made no sense. Why would Richard leave me now? Vanessa's expression became serious. "Because he thinks you found something." I stared at her. "I haven't. Maybe you don't know that you did." She stepped closer. "Claire, Richard has been moving money for years. Recently, he began transferring it faster. He knew someone was getting close." "Who?" Vanessa looked toward the street. Then she whispered, "Not me." Before I could ask what she meant, a car appeared at the end of the road. Vanessa's face changed instantly. "Who is that?" I asked. "I don't know." The car slowed, then continued past the house. Vanessa waited until the taillights disappeared. "Don't trust anyone around Richard," she said. "Not even you?" She looked at me. "No." Then she turned and walked away. I stood in the doorway, watching her disappear into the darkness. For the first time, I realized that I had no idea who the victim was. Me? Vanessa? Her father? Or perhaps all of us. I closed the door and returned to the kitchen. Richard's phone was still on the table. I picked it up again. The unknown number had sent another message. This time, there was no warning. There was a photograph. I opened it. My heart stopped. It showed me, standing outside a bank. The photograph had been taken 3 days earlier. I had never noticed anyone watching me. Then another message appeared. "Ask your daughter what she knows." I stared at the words. Emily, my daughter. Why would a stranger tell me to ask Emily? I called her immediately. She answered after 4 rings. "Mom, where are you?" There was a pause. Then Emily said, "Why?" I looked at the photograph on the screen. "Because I need you to tell me the truth." Silence. A long silence. And when my daughter finally spoke, her voice sounded different. Almost afraid. "About what?" I closed my eyes. "About your father." Another pause. Then Emily whispered, "Mom, what did he do?" I felt the blood drain from my face, because she had not asked what I meant. She had not said she knew nothing. She had simply asked, "What did he do?" And suddenly I understood. My husband might not be the only person in my family hiding a secret. The 7 days had begun, and I had no idea which one of the people I loved would betray me next. No, Gideon. Mom, what did he do? I sat in silence, staring at the phone. The question had been simple, but Emily's voice had not been. She sounded afraid, not surprised. Afraid. I tightened my grip on the phone. That's what I'm asking you. Another silence. Then she whispered, You saw something. It wasn't a question. I stood up. Emily, tell me the truth. I am. No, you're hiding something. She exhaled shakily. Then she said, I found documents. My heart began to pound. What documents? About Dad's company. What about them? I don't know how to explain it. Try. He used your name. I froze. What do you mean? I mean, your name is on financial documents. I know. I'm his wife. No, Mom. Her voice cracked. Your name is on documents you never signed. The room became completely silent. I looked at the divorce papers on the table, the forged signature, the property agreement, the messages, the money. Suddenly, everything was connected. How long have you known? 3 months. I closed my eyes. 3 months. My own daughter had known that something was wrong, and she had said nothing. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was scared. Of your father? Yes. That answer hurt. Not because Richard frightened me, because I realized how much fear he had created inside our family. Emily told me she had discovered the documents while helping Richard prepare a business presentation. She had seen transfers, large transfers, money leaving the company and moving into accounts she didn't recognize. Then she had noticed something strange. Several documents contained my signature, but the dates were impossible. I had been in another state, at my mother's funeral, at the hospital, on vacation. I had proof that I could not have signed them. So Emily began investigating, and what she discovered was worse than either of us imagined. Richard had created a company called North Star Holdings. The company had been registered using my personal information, my name, my address, my signature, but I had never heard of it. Who owns it? I asked. Emily hesitated. Technically, you. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? Mom, I think Dad created it so that if the money disappeared, it would look like you were responsible. I sat down. For 31 years, I had believed my husband was selfish, arrogant, unfaithful, but I had never imagined he was capable of sacrificing me completely. Then I remembered the message. You have 7 days. 7 days before what? I called Vanessa. She answered immediately. Did you talk to your daughter? Yes. Vanessa was silent. Why did you tell someone to ask me about Emily? I didn't. I froze. What? I never sent that message. The room seemed to grow colder. Someone told me to ask my daughter. Vanessa's breathing changed. Claire, what exactly did the message say? I told her. There was a long silence. Then Vanessa whispered, Thomas. Who? Richard's accountant. I remembered him. The man who had visited me after the divorce. The man who had warned me about Richard's financial problems. The man who had looked at me with sympathy. Vanessa continued, My father trusted Thomas. I felt a chill. What does that mean? Thomas worked with my father before he worked with Richard. I stood. Then he knew everything. Yes, and he helped Richard. I think so. The pieces fell into place. Thomas had warned me about the money because he wanted to control what I discovered. He had shown me documents, probably documents designed to make Richard look guilty while hiding his own involvement. He had wanted me to suspect Vanessa. Vanessa had wanted me to suspect Richard. Richard had wanted me to suspect myself. And somewhere in the middle of all those lies, the truth had been buried. I found the hidden compartment that night. It was inside an old wooden chest in the attic, a chest Richard had refused to let me open for years. Inside was a metal box. There were bank records, old photographs. and a USB drive. Emily connected it to her laptop. The first file was a video. A man appeared on the screen, older, thin, but instantly recognizable, Daniel Hart. I covered my mouth. He was alive, or at least he had been when the video was recorded. "My name is Daniel Hart," he said. "If you are watching this, then Richard has finally run out of places to hide." The video explained everything. The boating accident had been staged. Daniel had disappeared because Richard had tried to frame him for the missing money. Daniel had survived. He had lived under another name. But he had eventually become ill. Before his death, he had recorded the video. The money Richard had stolen had not been spent. Most of it had been hidden, and Daniel knew where. But then came the final revelation. Richard had not been the only person who knew. Thomas knew too. And Vanessa had spent years trying to recover what belonged to her father. I looked at Emily. "Where is the money?" She shook her head. "I don't know." Then her face changed. "Wait." She opened another file. It contained bank transfers. The money had been moved into several accounts. One of them belonged to North Star Holdings, my name. But another account belonged to a person I knew, Emily. I turned toward her. "What is this?" Her face went pale. "I didn't steal anything." "Then why is your name there?" "I transferred the money." I stared at her. "What?" "Mom, I found the account months ago. Dad was moving everything. I knew he was going to blame you." "So you took the money?" "I protected it." She began crying. I didn't know what else to do. I wanted to be angry, but I understood. Emily had spent her entire life trying to protect me from her father, and her weakness was the same weakness Richard had exploited. She believed she had to handle everything alone. I reached for her hand. "You should have told me. I was afraid you'd hate me. I could never hate you." Then there was a knock at the door. Richard. He stood on the porch. His expensive coat was gone. His face was pale. His company had collapsed that morning. His bank accounts had been frozen. Thomas had disappeared, and Vanessa had stopped answering his calls. He looked at me. "Claire." I did not invite him inside. "What do you want?" "I need your help." I almost laughed. "You need my help?" "I didn't know how bad it would get. You forged my name. I was going to fix it. You used me as a shield. I never meant for you to go to prison." The words were so coldly honest that they almost made me sick. He had not denied it. He had simply admitted that prison had been a possibility. I looked at the man I had loved for 31 years. Then I saw something behind him. Vanessa. She was standing at the end of the driveway. Richard turned. His face changed. "What are you doing here?" Vanessa walked toward us. "I brought the police." Richard stepped back. "You said you wanted the money. I wanted the truth. You used me." She stopped. "Yes." Richard stared at her. For the first time, he understood. The woman he had left his wife for had never wanted him. She had been investigating him. His daughter had secretly protected the money. His accountant had betrayed him. And the wife he had considered disposable was the one holding the evidence that could destroy him. Richard looked at me. "Claire." I shook my head. "No." He swallowed. "Please." I looked at the man who had told me I should be grateful he was giving me a chance to start over. Then I opened the door wider, not to let him in, to step outside. "You wanted a different life," I said. He stared at me. "You got one." The police arrived minutes later. Richard was arrested. The investigation cleared my name. The money was recovered. Thomas was found at the airport. Vanessa gave investigators everything she had, and Emily finally told me the full truth. Richard lost his company, his fortune, his reputation, his freedom. But the thing he lost that mattered most was the illusion that he controlled everyone around him. 1 week after he left me for Vanessa, he had lost everything. But I had lost something too. I had lost the woman I had been pretending to be. The woman who accepted lies to preserve a marriage. The woman who believed being left meant being worthless. The woman who spent 31 years making herself smaller so Richard could feel bigger. I sold the house 6 months later. I moved somewhere quiet, somewhere no one knew my husband. Somewhere I could walk into a room without being introduced as Richard Cole's wife. The first morning there, I made coffee. I sat on the porch, and for the first time in 31 years, no one was waiting for me to become someone else. I had spent my entire marriage afraid of being abandoned. Then Richard abandoned me, and I discovered the truth. He had not taken my future. He had returned it, because sometimes the person who leaves you is not taking away your life. Sometimes they are finally removing themselves from the part of it they were poisoning. Richard thought he was leaving an older woman for a younger one, but in the end, age was never the thing that defeated him. Time was. Time gave every lie a chance to surface, every secret a chance to be discovered, and every person he had underestimated a chance to finally speak. He thought I was too old to start over. He was wrong. I was simply old enough to know exactly what I would never accept again. And when I closed the door behind me for the last time, I did not feel abandoned. I felt free. The person who leaves you may believe they are taking your future with them, but sometimes they are only removing the obstacle that kept you from finding it. Richard thought he had chosen a younger woman. In reality, he had chosen his own destruction. And Claire, she finally chose herself. Was Claire right to refuse Richard's request for help? Do you think Vanessa wanted justice or revenge? And if you discovered that your spouse had secretly used your name to hide money, would you expose the truth even if it destroyed your entire family? Share your opinion in the comments. Opinion in the comments. Opinion in the comments. Opinion in the comments.